Hello everyone, welcome back to Daily Devotions with Pastor Peter. Let me just give you fair warning ahead of time. This passage is a little bit rated R, I guess, because of what's going on in this situation. It's a little graphic, so those of you who watch with your children, watch this first, and then watch with your children afterwards. But let's start together. This is Genesis chapter 34. One day, Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went to visit some of the young women who lived in the area. But when the local prince Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, saw Dinah, he seized her and raped her. But then he fell in love with her, and he tried to win her affection with tender words. He said to his father Hamor, "Get me this young girl. I want to marry her." Soon Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah. But since his sons were out in the fields herding his livestock, he said nothing until they returned. Hamor, Shechem's father, came to discuss the matter with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the field as soon as they heard what had happened. They were shocked and furious that their sister had been raped. Shechem had done a disgraceful thing against Jacob's family, something that should never be done. Hamor tried to speak with Jacob and his sons. "My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter," he said. "Please let him marry her. In fact, let's arrange other marriages too. You give us your daughters for our sons, and we will give you our daughters for your sons. And you may live among us. The land is open to you. Settle here and trade with us, and feel free to buy property in this area." Then Shechem himself spoke to Dinah's father and brothers. "Please be kind to me and let me marry her," he begged. "I will give you whatever you ask. No matter what dowry or gift you demand, I will gladly pay it. Just give me the girl as my wife." But since Shechem had defiled their sister, Jacob's sons responded deceitfully to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We couldn't possibly allow this because you're not circumcised. It would be a disgrace for our sister to marry a man like you. But here's a solution. If every man among you will be circumcised like we are, then we will give you our daughters and will take your daughters for ourselves. We will live among you and become one people. But if you don't agree to be circumcised, we will take her and be on our way." Hamor and his son Shechem agreed to the proposal. Shechem wasted no time in acting on this request, for he wanted Jacob's daughter desperately. Shechem was a highly respected member of his family, and he went to his father Hamor to present this proposal to the leaders of the town gate. "These men are our friends," they said. "Let's invite them to live here among us and trade freely. Look, the land is large enough to hold them. We can take their daughters as wives and let them marry ours. But they will consider staying here and becoming one people with us only if all of our men are circumcised just as they are. But if we do this, all their livestock and possessions will eventually be ours. Come, let's agree to their terms and let them settle here among us." So all the men in the town council agreed with Hamor and Shechem, and every male in the town was circumcised. But 3 days later, when their wounds were still sore, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, who were Dinah's full brothers, took their swords and entered the town without opposition. Then they slaughtered every male there, including Hamor and his son Shechem. They killed them with their swords, then took Dinah from Shechem's house and returned to their camp. Meanwhile, the rest of Jacob's sons arrived. Finding the men slaughtered, they plundered the town because their sister had been defiled there. They seized all the flocks and herds and donkeys, everything they could lay their hands on, both inside the town and outside in the fields. They looted all their wealth and plundered their houses. They also took all their little children and wives and led them away as captives. Afterwards, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have ruined me. You made me a stink among all the people of this land, among all the Canaanites and Perizzites. We are so few that they will join forces and crush us. I will be ruined, and my entire household will be wiped out." "But why should we let him treat our sister like a prostitute?" they retorted angrily. Like I said, this is a rated R passage where this is something that could be a movie that played out in an hour-long thing, but there's some really key points in this thing. As we see, there's some mistakes that happened right at the very beginning. The whole purpose of God taking Abraham out of the land of Ur and into the new land and establishing his community, his clan, was that he would be focused on God and not intermix with other religions and other practices around that area. But it all starts off with Dinah. Now, I know it's a little insensitive to blame the woman, but we could see that, one small mistake can lead to bigger ones later on if we don't stop realize where we went wrong. And it's unfortunate that things happen this way. And justice needs to be served, but not like this. One day, Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went to visit some of the young women who lived in the area. And this was the first mistake. The intermixing and being tempted into being aware of what is available for us to do. Now, sin is one of those things where just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Just because you could play with fire doesn't mean you should stick your hand in it. You could do that, but that's not recommended. I mean, that's for, cooking food. You don't stick your hand into fire just for fun. And again, with her, she went to visit some of the women in the area. Now, innocently enough, it started there. That's not a huge mishap or misstep per se, but it was one of the things that maybe she shouldn't have done, but she did anyway. She went into the town to visit some women. And that's what happened. A local prince, Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, saw Dinah, seized her, and raped her. Men on this side is, there's a lot of things going around about sexual harassment right now for men. It's a tough time being a guy. But when you act like this, you deserve to be punished. Now, with all the sexual harassment cases that are going around, I would say the majority of men don't act this way. But a lot of them, or not a lot of them, but a good number have. And punishment should be fair, should be just. And in this sense, he seized her and raped her. Now, at the same time, being a guy, let me just say this straight off, too. I just saw this video yesterday, and I sent it to my wife. And it's about this dad who walked into his daughter's room and who wore really, really short shorts and said to his daughter, if you continue wearing short shorts, I will wear these short shorts to school every day to pick you up, to embarrass you, right? Sometimes if it was on a guy and a guy wore really revealing clothes, it is kind of gross. And it's not something that is acceptable for guys to do. Of course, guys don't attract women by wearing clothes like this, but women, and I have to say this, take it as a grain of salt or for whatever sake, but I think women do know what they're doing when they wear certain clothes. And everybody, too, when we wear whatever we wear, it's to establish an air about who we are. Like for me, I'm wearing a blazer today. And my wife, kind of teased me before. She goes, why didn't you ever wear a blazer before? And, I just didn't. But it is practical, and this is really stretchy and comfortable. Target, hey, pretty good when it's on clearance. But one of the things I like about blazers now is that there's tons of pockets, and I carry a lot of things. What do I carry? I carry a pen. This is a really nice, heavy pen. I carry, a little pocket knife. I always carry now, and especially with the fact that Asian racist thingies are happening against Asian Americans now, I always carry pepper spray with me. This is a good brand, has a nice clip, and it's small, and it's safe. You just have to lift this up and then spray. I carry this around because I have a family of four kids and a wife, and you never know when you need it, especially when you're going out. Be prepared. I have a handkerchief here. You never know when I need that. I have my wallet. I have my keys. I have this little thing. Oh, my keys are over here right now. And then I have my phone, which, as you can see, this is a pretty big phone. And then I have this little thing where I could go doot, 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 and then pull doors. So I carry a lot of things. So having pockets help. Oh, I also carry, what do I carry? I have my mints somewhere, too. And that's important. And so there's a lot of things that I carry. Hand sanitizer. Oh, yes, I have hand sanitizer. I guess this is like an EDC with Peter kind of thing. So yeah, we wear things to get people to respond to us in a certain way, but then also the practicality of it. But I'm not saying that Dinah wore revealing clothes or whatnot. She may have been really beautiful in her own right. But for some of us, when we're wearing things, we're drawing attention to us that causes someone to stumble. And in this situation here, Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, he saw her, seized her, and fell in love with her. Raped her and fell in love with her. And I don't know what was going on in his mind. He probably had some weird, mental situation. But like in every situation, I'm not saying that it's the girl's fault, but to prevent things from happening, we have to stop it rather than encourage it from happening. And this is just the first part of this passage. It's already 9 minutes and 47 seconds. He fell in love with her. He wanted to get married with her. This is messed up. I'm sure she's not happy with what's going on, being forced, violently put down in order for him to rape her, and then turn around, and all of a sudden, from that violence to this endearment and then love and caring, it's really weird. It's something that's not normal, and I'm sure she was not pleased. I mean, that is the most private thing that each person possesses, and it was taken away from her, and to the point where her brothers were ticked off. And so they came to Jacob and asked if this could happen. The brothers were furious, but Jacob had to spend time to think about what was going on. We didn't see his reaction. We didn't know what he was doing, but they were furious. Shechem has disgraced the family of Jacob, and something that should have never been done. And then Hamor tried to speak with Jacob and his sons. My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter. How do we know that? And how do we know it? So here's another thing too. Dads, protect your daughters. Brothers, protect your sisters. If anybody messes with your family, it's time for something to happen. And maybe not like this, but justice needs to be served. You always, as men, it's our responsibility to protect those around us. It doesn't matter who or what. It could be, another kid getting bullied or whatnot. We don't allow things like that to happen. We stand up for what is right. Whether or not we like the person or not, we do what is right, but not like this. So they were proposing that, hey, let's get all married, intermarried, and then we'll give you your lands and everything else too. As we see later on, their plan was to take over Jacob's family anyway, so that in itself was deceitful. The whole sinfulness of rape was deceitful, but then it was responded with sinfulness as well too. We could see that the brothers were ticked off, and so they responded. We couldn't allow this to happen? No. Unless you all get circumcised. I don't know how many people are in that family, but this strategy, quite clever. You weaken the enemy to the point where they cannot go into battle. Now, circumcision back then is not like how it is today, or even anything today, too. We have today anesthesia. We could, numb the area in this sense. And circumcision usually happens on babies where they don't necessarily remember the pain, or their pain is different and the healing is a lot faster. In this sense, he went back. He loved her enough. Not loved her, and this is not love. Okay, love is an action, your willingness to go and do what you need to do. For better, sicker, better or worse, for sickness and health, riches and poor, all those things that you commit to your wife. Love is not just a feeling and not infatuation. He was lusting and infatuated by her and is using her as a sex object. And we see here, the brothers were ticked off. So, what do I have to do? Be circumcised. Be circumcised. And then we'll live among you. So, Hamor and Shechem agreed. That is a tall order for lusting. Or I don't know what society this was, but they placed sexual lust and visualization so much higher than what they should have. They're willing to go through this kind of process with pain to make it through. It's absurd. And they went through with it. 3 days later, after everything is done, all the people in their family, and Hamor and Shechem was respected too, they went and got circumcised. And they all agreed to do this. Yeah. Verse 24, so all the men in the town council agreed with Hamor and Shechem, and every male in the town was circumcised. Verse 25, but 3 days later, their wounds were still sore. Two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, who were Dinah's full brothers, took their swords and entered the town without opposition. Most likely they went into their town with them and their servants. Those servants aren't mentioned. And they killed Hamor and Shechem. They killed them by the sword. They took Dinah, their sister, from Shechem's house and returned to their camp. Meanwhile, the rest of Jacob's son arrived. Finding the men, the men slaughtered. They plundered the town. Seized all the flocks, herds, donkeys, everything they could lay their hands on, both inside the town and outside the fields. They looted all their wealth and plundered their houses. They also took their little children and wives and led them away as captives. And that is what happened with Jacob's family. Let's talk about a dysfunctional family. There you go. Murder, theft, revenge. And here's the thing. Verse 30. Afterwards, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have ruined me. You had made me a stink, and now they're going to join forces and crush us." I think there's a few things that we have to look at here. Jacob wasn't planning on a revengeful act like this. Now, we know what happened to Jacob. He had to trust in God for everything. What would it look like? Again, we have to look at the scenario. What would it look like if Jacob ended up praying to God and asking God to take vengeance for him? Even though he's capable with his men. And he knew the ramifications, that if he himself and his family went out, the possibility of them crushing them and ruining God's plan of them being a blessing to all nations could happen. I mean, we could take it as far as Jacob could see that, he could have been a blessing to them by them following along with the ways that God is going to be establishing through them. Maybe that's a possibility. And what would it look like? Now you have a situation where they were the ones who took revenge. There's no glory in that. But the thing is, what would it look like if God took revenge? We see Sodom and Gomorrah. We see what God can do. We see God later on in Egypt, where He had the 10 plagues. When we take revenge, it's not that we don't trust God. Actually, it is that we don't trust God, but it's us taking things in our own hands and responding evil with evil. What would it look like if we stopped for a little bit before we reacted? When we were wronged, when we have been wronged in our life, it's easy for us to retaliate and not look at the bigger picture, like these sons did. And this, most likely, his sons were in his 20s, I would say. And some of us, even in our 60s and 70s, we still make the same mistake because we are not in control of our own anger. And not only that, we don't allow the Holy Spirit to control our actions and pray before we do things. Jacob, in this sense, as we see, was quiet. Was it a righteous quiet? We don't know. But he didn't respond at that moment. But his sons did. Not only did Simeon and Levi murder everybody, but then the rest of his sons came in and stole everything and took everyone as captives. His whole family. His whole family. So as we look at this story, we need to see a few things. 1, be careful where you go. That's the first part. 2, be careful of what you wear and your attractiveness. I'm not saying that you should hide everything that God has blessed you with. No, attractiveness is most, I guess you could say, valuable, not necessarily in looks, but in character, in action. We don't know Dinah very well, but we know that she was beautiful enough where this guy who was in authority took advantage of that. But that's also another thing that we can learn. Men, watch out. Especially those who are in authority. Just because you're in authority doesn't mean you could take something away from someone else without asking. And in this case, he did. Another thing, don't be blinded by beauty and lust. As you can see, those things will kill, and it did. And don't steal, don't kill. And let God sort things out. I think the better response during this, and for us too, is instead of acting out in violence, what would it look like if Jacob said, you know what? Let's bring the family together to pray. Seeking God, asking God to reveal what we should do, versus just taking things in our own hands and wiping out a whole town. They could have gone into seeking forgiveness. We don't know. But what we do know, is that this happened. It's not very nice. So within our anger, do not sin. Within our anger, seek God for consolation, but then also seek God for His revenge. And pray even for His revenge on other people. But whatever it is, that we will see God at work. Now imagine if other nations saw that God destroyed that town, instead of his sons, Jacob's sons destroying the town, then the people would fear Jacob and his families rather than have their names be a stink, but then also in fear of being crushed. I'm having my kids play chess more often now. And it's something really good for everybody, I believe. Chess.com has an app, and I'm even learning through it too, to sharpening our strategizing skills. And it's not so that we could trust in our own strategy in order for us to accomplish anything, but it's for us to see that our strategy has limits, and that even whatever strategy we have, there are so many variables in the game. If you look at the game of chess, there's standard opening and there's standard closing, but then when the middle of your playing, there's so many things that could happen. Not everyone could, and not, you have to move and flow, but you can't determine what the other side's going to do. The only thing that we need to realize is that God is in control of all things. And until we understand that, we're going to continue to make mistakes and ruin things for ourselves. We have to be in a place where we have to come back to the foot of the cross, confess our sins to God, but also plead with God in our situations. So, my friends, this one is a long one. Short chapter, a long devotion, but it was a good one. Sad to say that these things have to happen, but we learn from the stories of Scripture so that we don't make the same mistakes again. Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.